Welcome back. Let's learn how to evaluate variable expressions. Alright, so in the previous lesson, you were introduced to variable expressions and identifying their various parts, but now we are actually going to start working with these variable expressions. We're going to start doing things with them. And the first thing that you're going to learn how to do with variable expressions is evaluate them. Because while variables represent unknown or changing values, sometimes we do know a specific value for a variable, or we might be interested in the result of a variable expression when a variable is of a certain value. All right, and so in those instances, we can evaluate a variable expression or determine its value by plugging in the values that we know. Or in other words, we will substitute in the values that we know for the appropriate variables and then just do the math to evaluate or find the value of the variable expression. All right, and it's important that once you plug in or substitute the known values, that when you do the math or when you simplify, that you remember the order of operations. Okay, oftentimes we refer to that as PEMDAS, which is just an acronym to help you remember the order of the operations. You start with anything that is inside parentheses, then you take care of any exponents, then you multiply and divide, and then finally addition and subtraction. Okay, so make sure to keep the order of operations in mind when you evaluate variable expressions. But enough about that, let's actually take a look at an example here. Here we have a very basic variable expression of 8x, and we are told that for this variable expression, in this particular case, x is equal to 10. It might not always be equal to 10. It could be equal to some other value depending on some other factors. But in this particular case, we want to evaluate this variable expression when x is equal to 10. All right, and so to evaluate the variable expression, we simply replace x with what it's equal to, which is 10. And so if we do that here, what we get is 8 multiplied by 10, right? 8x means 8 times x. So when you plug 10 in for x, you will be multiplying it by 8. So I just put some parentheses around 10 to represent that we will be multiplying 8 by that value. All right, and then after that, all that's left to do to find the value of our variable expression evaluated at x equals 10 is to multiply 8 times 10. And 8 times 10 is equal to 80. So 80 is the result of evaluating this variable expression of 8x when x is equal to 10. All right, or the way that you could interpret this result is that when x equals 10, 8x is equal to 80. That is what we just found right here. Okay, so that is how you evaluate a variable expression. Now this one was very basic. There was one variable and one term in our variable expression. So let's actually take a look at some more examples with more variables and more complicated variable expressions. All right, so here we want to evaluate the variable expression 3x plus 4y minus 2z when x equals 1, y equals 2, and z equals 3. Okay, so this time we have 3 terms in the variable expression, as well as 3 different variables to account for. So it's very important that you match up the right value to the right variables in the variable expression when you do your evaluating. All right, so let's start with x equals 1. What we want to do is plug 1 in for every x in this expression. And there's only 1, it's right here, so we will have 3 multiplied by 1, okay? Then we will add that to 4 times y. So let's move on to y here. We know that y is equal to 2. So if we plug 2 in for y, we will have 4 times 2. So I'll write that in here, 4 times 2. And then we are subtracting 2 times z. So we will have 2, but then we're going to multiply it by the value of z, which is 3. All right, so you want to replace z with 3. So we have 2 times 3. Okay, and now all that's left to do here is simplify by doing the math. And once again, you want to remember the order of operations. And so in this case, we want to do all of our multiplication first, and then we want to add and subtract our terms. Okay, so 3 times 1 is 3, so we will have 3 plus 4 times 2, which is 8, And then we have minus 2 times 3, which is 6. So we have minus 6. Okay, so that's what that's equal to. But then further simplifying, 3 plus 8 is 11, minus 6 is 5. All right, so this is equal to 11 minus 6, which is equal to 5. That is the value of this variable expression when these are the values of its variables. Okay, so it's very important that when you evaluate a variable expression that you keep track of what variables are equal to what and where those variables are in your expression. You do not want to plug in the wrong number or the wrong value for the wrong variable, okay? X is 1, Y is 2, Z is 3. Try not to mix those up. Let's take a look at another example. Here we want to evaluate this variable expression, a times b squared minus b squared, when a equals 3 and b equals negative 4. Okay, so to evaluate the variable expression, let's start by replacing all of the a's with 3, or by plugging in 3 for each variable a. And in this case, there's only one. It's the first variable of the variable expression. So we're going to have 3 multiplied by whatever b squared is. And b is equal to negative 4. All right, so negative 4 is going to be squared and multiplied by a. So we have 3 multiplied by negative 4 squared. All right, and then you'll be subtracting b squared again. So we have another negative 4 squared. Okay, we replaced every a with 3, and there is only one of them, and we replaced every b with negative 4, and there were 2 of them. All right, now simplifying, remember your order of operations. In this case, we do have some exponents to take care of, so let's do that first. We're still going to have 3, but it will be multiplied by negative 4 squared. And what negative 4 squared means is negative 4 multiplied by itself. So we have negative 4 times negative 4, which is equal to positive 16. All right, so we have 3 times 16, and then we are subtracting negative 4 squared again, which is still going to be 16. And then to finish off our answer here, we need to multiply 3 by 16, and then we'll subtract 16. All right, you want to do the multiplication first, and then the subtraction. And 3 times 16, that's equal to 48. So this is equal to 48 minus 16, and 48 minus 16 is 32. Okay, that is the value of this variable expression when a is positive 3 and b is negative 4. Let's take a look at another example. Hey there, real quick, before we get to the next part of this lesson, if you find my tutorial videos here at JK Math to be helpful, then I'd like to invite you to join my membership site, JK Math Plus, where you get access to many perks, including bonus content and my exclusive community. The bonus content includes dark mode versions of my videos, extra example problems, and more, while the community is a private space online where you can post questions, have discussions, and study together with me and other members. To learn how to join and see a full list of everything you get access to as a member, you can head over to jkmathematics.com/plus. I'll have a link for that in the description of this video. So if you are interested in becoming a member, feel free to check that out. It's a great way to support me and the tutorials I make, as well as a great way for you to learn math better. But for now, let's get back to the lesson. Next up, we want to evaluate this variable expression. We have 6 times the quantity, y minus 3, where that entire quantity is being squared, and then we are adding 4. And we want to evaluate that when y equals 6. Okay, so once again, just one variable to work with here. We want to know what the value of this is when y equals 6. So what we want to do is substitute 6 in for y. And there's only one y here, so this is not too complicated. We just have to remember the order of operations when we simplify. So what we'll get here, if y equals 6, is 6 multiplied by 6 minus 3 squared plus 4. Okay, we replaced this y with 6. And now we just have to do the math. This time, we have a set of parentheses with an operation inside of it, so we have to do that first. All right, we have 6 minus 3, which is equal to 3. So this is equal to 6 times 3 squared. You want to keep that same exponent, don't change it, and then you want to add 4. Now, next, you want to take care of any exponents, and we do have one here. We have 3 squared, which is equal to 3 times 3, which is 9. So this is equal to 6 times 9 plus 4, and 6 times 9 is 54, so this is equal to 54 plus 4, which is equal to 58. 58 is the value of this variable expression when y equals 6. Let's move on to another example. Here we want to evaluate this variable expression, b minus d divided by c minus a, when a equals -2, b equals 4, c equals -1, and d equals 3. Okay, so this one's a little bit more involved than our previous examples. We now have 4 variables to keep track of here, and all 4 of them do show up in this variable expression. But let's start by just focusing on plugging in the values for each of the variables respectively. All right, so remember, we have a equals -2, b equals 4, c equals -1, and d equals 3. So what you want to do is look for where each of those variables are in this variable expression. And so if I just rewrite it here, we have b minus d divided by c minus a. Okay, so b is 4, d is 3, c is -1, and a is -2. So this will be equal to 4 minus 3 divided by -1 minus -2. All right, we substituted in or plugged in 4 for b, and then 3 for d, -1 for c, and then -2 for a. And so now all there's left to do is a little bit of math, and we will have the final value of our variable expression when all those variables are equal to these different values. Okay, so simplifying what we have here, let's start with the top of this fraction, or the numerator. We have 4 minus 3, that's equal to 1. So this is equal to 1 divided by -1 minus -2. Now remember, subtracting a negative number is the same as just adding the positive version of that number. Those two negatives cancel each other out. So really what we have in the bottom of this fraction, or the denominator, is we have -1 plus 2. So I'll write that down here, -1 plus 2, and -1 plus 2 is positive 1. So this is equal to 1 divided by 1, and 1 divided by itself is equal to 1. All right, so a pretty nice result. That is the value of this variable expression when these are the values of a, b, c, and d. Okay, let's take a look at one more example for this video. All right, so for our last example, we want to evaluate this variable expression, which as you can see is far more involved than our previous examples. This is the most complicated expression that we have looked at so far. So this is really going to test what you learned in this video. Specifically, the variable expression is 4 multiplied by the quantity x minus y, all divided by 3 times x times y times z minus 3 times x squared. And we want to evaluate that variable expression when x equals 1, y equals 3, and z equals -3. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do here is find x, y, and z in this variable expression and replace each of those variables with their respective values. All right, so starting with x equals 1, we have an x here, here, and here. So we want to replace all of those with 1. And then for y is equal to 3, we are going to want to replace this y and this y with 3. Those are the only two y's in this variable expression. And then finally, for z equals -3, there's just one z. It's right here in the variable expression. All the other variables are either x or y. So there's only one place where we should be plugging in -3. Nowhere else. Only right here. Okay, so let's plug in those values or substitute them in. We will have 4 multiplied by the quantity of x minus y, where x is 1 and y is 3. So we'll have 1 minus 3, and then we will be dividing by 3 multiplied by x, which is 1. So we're multiplying 3 by 1, and then we're multiplying that by y, which is 3. So we're multiplying by 3, and we're multiplying that by z, which is -3. So we're going to be multiplying by -3. And then finally, you want to subtract 3 multiplied by x squared. And once again, x is equal to 1, so we will be multiplying by 1 squared. Okay, so that is our variable expression, but where we've plugged in the values that we've been given for each of those variables. All right, so now all there's left to do is simplify this. We want to do the math. Starting in the top of the fraction, or the numerator, we want to perform the operation inside these parentheses, and we have 1 minus 3, that's equal to -2. So this is equal to 4 multiplied by -2. And then in the bottom of the fraction, or the denominator, we have 3 times 1, which is 3, times 3, which is 9. So I'll write that down. We have 9, and that will be multiplied by -3. We'll take care of that in our next step. I just want to simplify a little bit at a time here. That way we don't make any mistakes along the way. But then we are subtracting 3 multiplied by 1 squared. And you want to take care of the exponent first before you do anything else. But in this case, 1 squared is just 1. 1 times itself is 1. So you have 1 times 3, which is just 3. So you will just be subtracting 3. Okay? Now simplifying further, we have 4 times -2. That's equal to -8. And then we're dividing by 9 times -3 minus 3. 9 times -3 is -27. So we have -27 minus 3, and -27 minus 3 is -30. So this is equal to -8 divided by -30. Now, because we have a negative number divided by another negative number, those negatives are canceled out. We're just going to be left with 8 divided by 30, or 8/30ths. And then remember to simplify or reduce a fraction as far as you can. You want to look for any common factors in 8 and 30. And in this case, both 8 and 30 can be divided by 2. So they both have a factor of 2. So dividing each of those by 2 gives you a reduced fraction of 4/15, right? 8 divided by 2 is 4, 30 divided by 2 is 15. And so 4/15 is the final answer. That is the value of this variable expression when x, y, and z are equal to these values. All right, and so with that, that is it for this lesson on evaluating variable expressions. But if you do want to get some more practice, if you want to work through some more examples, feel free to check out my examples video for this topic that I'll have linked here on the screen. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. But if you don't have any questions, this is all I had for now, so I will see you next time.